Hello there, bread machine fans. Welcome to Butterfly Meadows Homestead. I'm Dorinda. Today we are going to be baking up a warm, cozy treat in the bread machine, cranberry walnut bread. It has tart cranberries, crunchy walnuts, and warm spice. It's perfect for breakfast or a treat or for the holidays. It's great for fall, and I know you're going to love it. So fire up the bread machine and grab your ingredients and bake along with me as we make this delicious loaf of cranberry walnut bread. Remember, the ingredient list will be in the description box below. If you enjoy these videos, please subscribe if you haven't already. Boop that like button and share this video with your friends. I am so excited because we are almost at the 5,000 subscriber mark. We are at, I think it's 4,600 and something. So we're getting closer every day to that 5,000 subscriber mark. It has been a long journey. I have enjoyed it, and I just can't wait to see what the future holds once we hit 5,000. Let's go over the ingredients you're going to need to make this delicious loaf of bread. So first of all, you're going to need 3 cups of bread flour. I use a high gluten bread flour. I have a link in my Amazon shop to the bread flour I use, but I noticed the other day that it's no longer available. So I'm going to go replace that link with something that is available. But really, any bread flour that you can find that is a good quality bread flour. If it says high gluten, that's even better. Flour, it varies, I have noticed, from area to area, because of the wheat that it's made from. But if you can find a good high gluten bread flour, you will be so happy with how your loaves of bread turn out. So you need 3 cups of good quality bread flour. I have here 1 egg, the whole egg. I have a half a cup of chopped walnuts, 1/3 of a cup of brown sugar, 1 teaspoon of vanilla. I'm using clear vanilla, but you can use the brown vanilla if you want. I have 1 tablespoon of allspice. If you don't like allspice, but you want to use some kind of spice, you could use cinnamon, nutmeg, whatever spices you want to use. Cinnamon and nutmeg and clove go really good. 1 or all of those go really good with this bread. I have 1½ teaspoons of salt. I'm using Himalayan pink salt. You can use whatever salt you like. I have 2 1/4 teaspoons of active yeast, dry yeast. I have 2 tablespoons of canola oil. You can use any kind of oil you want. You could even use butter. And here I have a half a cup of dried cranberries, which I have put a couple of tablespoons of orange juice over. They've been soaking about 30 minutes. I did warm the orange juice up in the microwave, and I just like my dried fruit to be a little moist when I put it in my bread so that it doesn't dry out my bread. And then we have some milk. We're going to be using about a cup of milk or so. I'll show you how I measure it once we start putting these ingredients together. I have oiled the stem of my bread pan and put my paddle on. If you oil the stem that the paddle goes on, it makes it much easier to get that paddle out when you get ready to take it out. Now let's get started putting this bread together. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put my egg in my measuring cup. Whenever you add egg to a recipe, let's say your recipe doesn't call for egg, but you want to add an egg to your bread because egg adds a softness. It will make the texture of your bread softer, and it just really enriches the bread. And I like to use an egg in my bread. Sometimes I don't, but I have lots of eggs right now, and I definitely want to use an egg. So I'm going to put the egg in my measuring cup, and then I'm going to measure my milk, and that's why I said about a cup of milk, because the egg counts as a liquid. Now normally I'm going to need 1 1/3 cup of liquid, whether it be milk or water or a combination. I'm just going to use all milk. If you don't want to use milk, you can use water, and you can even leave the egg out. But you're going to need 1 1/3 cup of liquid. Now also, I want to use the orange juice that my cranberries have been soaking in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drain this orange juice off into my cup as well. Hopefully not get the cranberries, just the orange juice. as much as possible. And that's going to count as part of my liquid as well. Now I'm going to pour in milk until I get up to the 1 1/3 cup, 1 1/3 cup measuring mark. Okay, there I have 1 1/3 cup of liquid, and that includes my egg and my orange juice. And I'm just going to stir this with a fork a little bit to get the egg broken up. Now we are ready to put most of the ingredients into our bread pan. I'm going to start with my liquid ingredients. I'm just going to pour that in. I'm going to add my oil. That's 2 tablespoons of canola oil. I'm going to add my vanilla. Going to add my salt, 1 1/2 teaspoons of salt. And here I have, and I don't know if I mentioned this when I went over my ingredient list, but if I didn't, this is 1/3 cup of brown sugar packed. When I measured it, I packed it in the cup. I'm going to put that in. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to sprinkle my allspice all over the top of this liquid so it'll get mixed in really well. And I'm going to go ahead and add in my cranberries now. I'm going to wait and add the nuts about 30 minutes into the bread cycle. But I want my cranberries to get kind of macerated, you might say, into the bread. So I'm going to go ahead and add those in. And I'm actually going to go ahead and I'm going to sprinkle my yeast right in here on top. Then I'm going to add my 3 cups of bread flour. We're going to wait and add the nuts, like I said, about 30 minutes into the cycle here on the bread machine. I brought the camera down so hopefully you can see as I put the pan. This is the KBS bread machine. You want to lock our pan in there, and like I always do, I'm going to go to menu number 11 on the KBS, and that is the raw dough cycle. I'm going to let it mix for about 5 minutes, 4 or 5 minutes. Now after your dough has been mixing for a couple of minutes, let me get this adjusted a little better. You want to check on your dough and see what that dough ball is looking like. Because if it's too dry, now would be the time to add a little more liquid. And this dough ball is just a tad dry. I know because of the cranberries, no doubt. And then sometimes I also don't measure my flour the same all the time because I just scoop it out and I don't weigh it. It's not extremely dry, this dough ball is not, but because I'm going to be adding nuts in a little bit, I'm going to add about a tablespoon of milk. We'll give that a couple of minutes to mix in and then we'll go to the next step. Okay, so our dough has been mixing for about 4 or 5 minutes. And as you can see, if you've watched my other videos, this dough ball is a little bit stickier than I would normally want a dough ball. But because I'm going to be adding nuts, I like for my dough ball to be a little bit softer. Otherwise, the bread machine has a really hard time getting the nuts mixed in, and the nuts will absorb a little bit of moisture. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the machine off by holding the stop button for about 3 seconds. And we're going to use the basic white bread, menu option number 1. And I want to go to the 2-pound loaf. I want a medium crust, which it defaults to a medium crust. Now I want to let this sit for, I don't know, for about 15 minutes, 10 minutes, I don't know. I'm going to hit the plus button, which is adding reservation time. And the first time I hit it, it added 4 minutes. I want it to sit longer than that. And so then it added 10 minutes. So that's 14 minutes that it's going to rest. And then it will come on and go through the basic white bread setting. Now, the basic white bread setting is 3 hours and 16 minutes on the KBS machine. And at about 30 minutes in is when you want to add your nuts. Now that's 30 minutes of the actual cycle time, not 30 minutes counting the reservation time. So if we take 3 hours and 16 minutes and take 30 minutes away, that is going to be about 2 hours and 45 minutes left on the bread cycle. That is where we want to add our nuts. Now, if you are using a KBS bread machine and you have a fruit and nut dispenser like the KBS 17-in-1 comes with, you can add your nuts to the dispenser. I don't normally use the dispenser, but I thought, hey, let's use it. So you lock that in. This is the flap that opens up when it's time. And then let me get that situated in there. And so now when it is time to add the nuts, this will pop open and the nuts will fall into the pan and be incorporated into the dough. So we have 3 hours and 30 minutes on the bread machine. That includes my 14-minute rest. And we're going to go ahead and hit start, and that will start counting down. And when it's time, it will add the nuts. And if I catch it, I'll try to come back and show you what it looks like as the nuts are mixing in. So our nut dispenser has just dumped the nuts into the pan, and I just wanted to check and make sure they are mixing in well. It's doing a fairly decent job. I think if we let that go, they should be mixed in pretty good in a few minutes. And I'll check it in a couple of minutes and make sure it did get them incorporated. And I'm going to go ahead and remove this dispenser in case my bread rises up. That way it won't be taking up any headspace in my machine. And it has already picked up all those nuts. You can tell by the sound they're not stirring around in the bottom anymore. And that bread is looking absolutely delicious, that dough ball is. I'm just going to clean the top off up here a little bit. So we'll be back when it's done and see what we got. The bread is about ready to come out of the bread machine. I'm just waiting on the timer to go off. We're going to take it out of the pan and put it here to cool. And after it's cooled, we will slice into it. I just want to take this time to remind you, always let your bread cool before you slice into it. And the reason for that is if you slice hot bread, it changes the texture on the inside. The inside will become dense and gummy, and you won't like the texture. It needs time to cool down naturally before you slice into it. There's our timer. I'm going to hold the start button and for about 3 seconds to turn it off, because the keep warm will stay on for about 30 minutes. And boy, am I glad I removed that fruit and nut dispenser. Look what a tall loaf of bread we have here. So carefully get your bread out. Now when it rises this tall, I can't grab it by the handle, so I just kind of have to reach down in and get the corners of the pan. It is a beautiful loaf of bread. It smells delicious. And I did remove the paddle right before the final rise. I removed the paddle so we don't have a very big hole in the bottom. This bread just looks beautiful. I'm just going to cover it with this little cotton towel. Let it cool for about 30 minutes. Our bread is cool and ready to be sliced. So we're gonna slice into this and see what the crumb looks like. And I get asked a lot about my bread slicing guide. This I got years ago at a thrift store. You can't buy new ones like it now. So if you ever see one like this at a thrift store, you might want to grab it. It's wonderful. The way it's raised up in the front, it just does such a great job in helping me slice the bread. I do have a link for a bread slicer on my Amazon shop. You can find the link in the description below, but it's not exactly like this one because you just can't find them like this anymore. Just look at that. It has a beautiful crumb. It looks like the nuts in it cause it to tear a little bit when I'm slicing it. But it is a beautiful crumb. Look at that. It's so soft. Let's have a little taste. That is perfect. That is a wonderful bread. You can make sandwiches out of this. You could make toast. You could make an icing out of some powdered sugar if you want to make a little glaze to serve it with. It could be for breakfast. It could be for a snack. It could be for a sandwich, however you want to serve it. I can see this making a wonderful chicken salad sandwich because cranberries and walnuts go great in chicken salad. Be sure and watch my other video here for more great bread recipes.